Hello, Townstar players. This is Neil Walters with neilsvideos.com, and today I have a slightly different video for you. I've been using my noggin. I've been thinking, what are the phases of playing the Townstar game? If you play it for a week in the competition, or even if you just play it on the play to earn servers, what are the phases that you go through in building your town? So I have come up with a list of 10 phases. I don't know if anybody else has done this, so this is, I think, my own original work. And I have this Word document here, and I will hopefully within the next week or so turn it into a PDF and make it available if you want to download it. But please don't rush me on that. I'm just doing this in the evenings, for fun and love, I guess. So this is what I came up with. And for every one of these points in this table of contents, I'm going to go through today. And I have this, more pages in this document. We'll just go through it, and I will kind of babble and tell you my thoughts about it and how I came up with this. So basically you have day 1, day 2, and day 3 and beyond, okay? Okay, first let's just read through them and see what they are. Day 1, some people call it the blank rush, like the wool rush or the grape rush or whatever. First of all, there's a land rush. You pick your town location. Number 2, you have to have something of value to sell for without running out of gas, without running out of money. Number 3, you have to create your own gas to stay alive. That's the whole gas production plant process. And then number 4, what I like to do is beef up my refinery facility before I go to bed the first night and then go to bed. And then basically when you come back in the morning, you'll have like over $1 million of the in-game money, and then you can start upgrading a lot of things because you're going to have like $1 or $2 million worth of in-game money. So I'll talk about what I would upgrade first, what I wouldn't upgrade, and then at that point, you can just auto run or you can keep upgrading. And then this is where it kind of branches out and you have to decide what you want to do. So this is phase 8 as you decide where you're going to go next. And then continuing day 2, or maybe even day 3, and even for the next week or whatever, you're going to be constantly expanding and tweaking and tuning and learning. And then if you're competing in the competition, you're going to have that final push. If it's the last day or two and you're like really close to being in the top 400, you might stay up all night or something and really push to be in the top 400. So that's what we're going to go through in this video. So again, day 1, some people I call it the XX rush or the XYZ rush, because some people do a wool rush, some people do a grape rush, and there are many different videos all across YouTube on how to do these different rushes. They've been doing those videos for, several months now. In my time zone, the game begins at 11 a.m. Central Time. So first of all, you need to find out what that is in your time zone. You can go to World Time Buddy and you can convert my time, or you can go read it on the Townstar site. And then I usually go to bed about midnight. So I have from that 11 a.m. until midnight that night. And then the big issue is, what if you're working during this time? So if you work an 8 to 5 job and you're in central United States, you can't even begin your rush until you get home at, say, 5 or 6 in the evening. So that kind of totally changes the way I lay out the days here. So you will have to adapt to your actual time schedule. Okay. So the phases are more or less the same, even if the days are not the same. So first thing is the land rush. You have to select your town location. A river or two can make watering easier. I'm not sure I still have ever gotten a river. I try, but again, if you don't log on the server like exactly at 11 o'clock that day and jump fast, you're not going to get a river. Getting an ocean is a little bit easier, and I always pick forest so far, and I try to pick pretty close to a city where it doesn't take more than 1 minute to deliver my goods, which is usually, 2 to 4, maybe 5 squares from a city. You don't want to be like 10, 20 squares away from a city. Ocean is good for creating salt from brine. The brine will will grow, so to speak, real fast. Other than that, I still haven't played much other than the forest, so I cannot advise you on the desert. And I have done mountain now a couple times, but I'm still learning about that. So this is one of the fun things about Townstar is you can keep learning different scenarios as you go, so that the game is never boring to you. But on the other hand, if you want to compete, you might want to specialize and really become an expert in one thing rather than just being all over the board playing different things. So phase 2, after you picked your town, you have to have something of value to sell, basically with 2 conditions. You can't run out of gas and you can't run out of money. If you run out of gas, you almost have lost at that point, because you have to plan to have your gas ready. And that's basically going to be phase 3. So you have to sell something of value that can get you into phase 3 to build your refinery. A refinery is not that easy to build. It takes like 7 different things to build it, and that's what we'll talk about in phase 3. So if you just start selling wheat, for example, wheat is only going to create, I think it's $2,000 or something. It's very little money. And you're going to use up your gas selling and only getting 2,000 each time. And that's not a good return on investment. So what I put down here somewhere is I think you need to make 8,000 minimum on up to 30,000 or more per sale. And to do that, you can't sell cheap stuff like wheat or feed or even wood or stuff like that. You have to find an item that has more value. If you're in the farmer part of the world, that means you take your wheat and you mill it to flour. You take your sugar cane and you mill it to sugar. You take your brine and you mill it to salt. So the salt, the sugar, and the flour sell for a lot more money because they had to go through the milling process. To do that, you have to spend the 15,000 to get a windmill or two when you first start the game. Okay, you're going to need a storehouse in this part of the game, maybe even 2 of them. It depends how many different products you have, because basically if you only have one product, you don't really have to worry about your storehouse filling up. But if you have like 4 different products and you need to sell in groups of 10, right? So, okay, let's just look at the animal products. We have wool, eggs, and milk. So those are 3 different products. Let's say if you had 7 of each one of those, that adds up to, you can put 20 items in a storehouse, right? So if you had 7 of each, that's 21, which is one more than what you could put in a storehouse, and you never have 10 of anything. And you can't actually sell something on a truck unless you have 10 of them. So if you're going to have 3 products, you would definitely need at least 2 storehouses, okay? And again, you might need more than one silo if you're growing different types of crops. And this is still part of what they call the rush. The rush really goes on until you build your refinery. And what worked well for me was you build a chicken coop first, because that is the cheapest farm animal thing that you can build, but it has a lot more return than selling like even flour, I think. So if you build one chicken coop and you pile up 10 sets of eggs, you can sell your eggs, you make a little money, you sell some more eggs, you make a little money. And if you do that, say 3 to 5 times, then you'll have enough to build a milk barn, which is $50,000. And then once you have one milk barn and a chicken coop, you let those sell for 4 or 5 times. And then now you build a second milk barn, for example. So that's how you do sort of the rush philosophy. So here again, I make some notes. This could be done with chicken, coop, wool, milk barn, milled items such as flour, sugar, salt. I kind of like the new peppermint. It's a new crop that sells for $8,000 per group of 10, and you don't need a mill to do it. So sometimes, like, I'll do a couple peppermints while I'm doing the chicken coop. And then once I get more animal products done, then I'll kill my peppermints and I won't use them anymore because the animal products sell for more anyway. At the beginning of the game, you need to know that you can sell your pawns for 5,000 each. So what a lot of people do is they'll sell like between 80 and 90% or more of their pawns. They just might keep 1 or 2 or 3 pawns and then they sell all the rest. And that generates you some cash that you can use to like buy your chicken coop or buy your storehouse. And if you play in the forest, you're going to have a lot of pawns. And again, I have not played in the desert, so I can't really advise you on that. I keep talking about this AutoSell script. It uses a plugin called Tamper Monkey, and I have a whole separate video on that. And I think this is a must for getting efficient at the game because it will sell your products for you almost immediately. So that cash will come in as fast as possible. And if you're playing manually, what might happen is your storehouse could fill up and you go to the kitchen, you don't notice it. And then your farmers or your ranchers are pulling in eggs and they're throwing them on the ground because there's no place to store them. So if you keep selling 10 items every time you put 10 items in the storehouse, it just keeps things a lot more efficient. You have to balance the number of farmers for your crops and the number of ranchers for your animals. So the more crops you have, the more farmer houses you need, and the more animals or animal things that you have, the more ranchers you need. That's just, I think, common sense. You will have to build tree farms as needed. So again, if you start in a forest, you're going to have a lot of trees to begin with. but maybe, I can't remember the exact time, maybe an hour or hour and a half into the game, you're going to notice that your lumberjack has already cut down all those trees, and those trees can take, well, they take a long time to regrow. So what will happen is they'll slowly start regrowing, but not usually as fast as what you need for your wood to do other things in the game. So you need more wood, you need to build tree farms, and they need a lot of water, so you might have to put them next to a pond, or hopefully you don't have to build ponds at this point of the game, because you just destroyed a bunch of ponds to make money, so then you have to spend $20,000 to add another pond. So you want to put your trees next to a pond and some marshes at the beginning of the game, and then you might also need a couple of wells so that the farmers can water them. So basically they grow faster than what I call the individual chop down trees that you were given on your initial land. And you need lumberjack houses to cut them down, and they will put them in the woodshed. All right, there's no pictures in my document. That would be a much longer document. I'm more talking about strategy, and I'm assuming you've already played the game. And this is just going to tune the way you think about the game rather than teaching you everything. Okay. Phase 3 is to create your own, that's double word, create your own gas to stay alive. How do you create gas? You have to have a refinery. So here is, again, I have a separate video on this. I did actually one of my first videos I did on Townstar, because I found it kind of overwhelming at first. So this is the first thing a beginner has to really master. And if you add up the cost of these, I actually wrote them down on a piece of paper the other day. They cost about $50,000, maybe even 55 or 60, because I've noticed the other day you may have to destroy a marsh, or maybe even a tree stump, which is 15,000. Or you might have to build a couple extra dirt roads, stuff like that. So the products I list here are about $50,000. And again, you might need an extra 10 on top of that, 5 to 10, just depending. And when I talk about energy in the game, that's the battery icon. And they call them energy or energies, but sometimes I call them batteries. Okay. So this is the order I would build these things in. You need an industrial worker house. House on there to carry the oil and energy. And how much is he? He's 2,500. And his purpose is to basically carry the oil and the energy. He takes the oil out of the oil pump that you're going to build, and he puts it in the fuel tank, and he'll go out to the windmills or the wind turbines that you're going to build, and he will put those in the warehouse that you're going to build. Okay. So without him, you really can't do anything else. Now, you could build the oil pump first if you wanted to. It's going to take about maybe 2 to 3 minutes to make the first crude oil. And by the time that's done, then that's when you need the industrial worker to be able to carry that oil to your fuel tank. You need 10 grand or 10,000, 10K for your your warehouse. And the purpose of your warehouse is to hold two things: water drums and energy or batteries. Then you need wind turbines, which are $2,500 each. And eventually you'll need more than one, but you could probably start off with 1 to 3. So when I said $50,000, I was just assuming there was one wind turbine. So that's another reason it might be 50 to 60. And those will create energies or batteries for you. And the thing you need to remember about those is to avoid wind block. You don't want them close to anything else on the board, like 3 squares away. And then when you look at them, you'll see that they're green when you click on them and see how fast they're running. If they're yellow or red, they're going to be pretty slow, and you won't be able to create your batteries fast enough. Then you need a water facility, 10,000, and you need to put it next to a pond if possible. And that eliminates the time that the water guy has to go fetch the water to put into the water facility. So put it by the pond if you want it to be as fast as possible. Then upgrade a road to a paved road. So as I'm going to talk about down here later, you have to kind of have your layout in mind. And I'm not going to provide the exact layout for you. There are other videos and other channels that do that. Maybe one day I'll compare and contrast different ones. I'm still trying to work on the layout that I like the best, and I haven't decided yet. That's what comes with experience. So as a beginner, if you kind of go follow someone else's model, you'll be better off in the long run, especially when we get to phase, I forget, 3 or 4 or 5 coming in a minute. You upgrade a road to a paved road, and then you're going to build a refinery, which is 15K or 15,000 next to the paved road. And here's where I said, now go back and add as many wind turbines as you need. I can't tell you how many you need. It depends on your land and how fast your turbines are and where everything's located. A lot of different factors. I typically would probably have about 3 at this point, sometimes 4 or 5. So careful layout of the above is a skill that you must learn and improve over time. Now, once you have that done, you can start crafting in your refinery either petroleum or gasoline, but not at the same time. So what you have to do is you have to hit the craft button and say, I want to make petroleum. You do that for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you stop it, and then you say, now I'm going to convert it to gas. And you craft gas for 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, and then you got to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that is a very time consuming thing for you to do, and you're going to forget. And like if you leave it on gasoline mode too long, it's going to chew up all the petroleums you have in your fuel tank, and then you're not going to be able to make any more gas. So your refinery is just going to sit there costing you like $200 a minute of the funny money, and you're going to be paying for that, and you're not actually going to be creating gas. So you have to be very careful with that at this stage. The refinery will use water drums and energy. So that's why you have to have those to be able to create petroleum and gas. And gas costs about double of what it takes to build petroleum, at least in water and energy. You have to balance those as to how many you keep in your warehouse. So another thing you have to manually juggle at this point is if you leave your water facility on and you only have one warehouse, what's happened to me even again today is my warehouse filled up with like 20 water drums and there was no room for the batteries. Or vice versa. If you have 5 windmills, you might turn your water facility off and then all of a sudden you have 20 batteries and there's no room for the water. If that happens, you have 2 choices. You can build another warehouse or you can flush it and start all over. Just flush means empty what's in the warehouse. Or you can hit the sell button and you can sell 10 waters or 10 of the batteries, but that's going to cost you a gasoline, which you don't have a lot of gas at this point of the game. So that's not always a smart idea. But it might be cheaper than flushing everything or building another warehouse. Okay, phase 4. So basically at that point, you're able to create gas. It's not very fast, it's not very efficient, but as long as you're making money from your crops and your animals, you'll be able to keep making gas now to keep selling them. And by the way, one more thing on this part of the game, it's kind of up to you as to how low you want to risk it. I would say that you want to have your refinery done before you're down to, say, if you're a beginner, before you're down to 10 gas. I actually played a game last week where I was down to 1 gas left, and I knew these items cost $50,000. And so I think I had 50,000 in my cash. Well, anyway, it just worked out where I was down to my last gas, and that was cutting it way, way too close. Because if you run out of money, then you either have to start your whole town all over again, or you have to sell a pond, which is very expensive. Like if you only have 2 or 3 ponds left, you need those for other things. So selling a pond, just as a cash reserve is not always a good idea. And by the way, what you might want to do is save 1 pond just as kind of like a savings account if you wanted to. Okay. So that's that section. Now, still on the first day, if you can, before you go to bed, phase 5 is going to be go to bed. Now you want to beef up your refinery facility. So while you're doing all this refinery stuff, your crops need to keep coming in and keep producing. And if you can kind of grow them at the same time, fine. Like for example, if it's at the beginning you have 2 milk barns, maybe during this phase 3 and 4, you can add a 4th or a 5th milk barn if you can. And also using the AutoSell script, what you can do is you can let your milk, for example, sell and then just come back every hour. And then you should have whatever, $100,000 or 150 or something like that. And then you work on your refinery as much as you can for that 150. And then you, again, just let your milk sell again for another hour, come back, and then now you do something else with your refinery. So if you're using the AutoSell script, you don't actually have to be sitting there actively interacting with the game if you tune everything properly, especially after phase 4. But during phase 3, remember, you're going to have to keep switching your refinery back and forth. And unfortunately, you'll have to do that about every 10 or 15 minutes or less, okay? So you can't go away like really for an hour at that point. Okay, so now you're going to beef up everything so that you don't have to be sitting there all the time. Your goal is to be able to leave your town running by itself. Start out for an hour, but if not an hour, for 8 hours while you go to sleep and have breakfast and brush your teeth and do all that kind of stuff, right? And you need to be self-sufficient. So your town should be able to keep providing for itself at this point. And again, you're going to use the AutoSell script to do that. At this point, I cannot imagine playing the game without the AutoSell script. To me, it's a lifesaver. And again, that's why I did a whole separate video on that. So in phase 4, you beefing up your refinery. You still make sure you have enough trees and wood. And because some of the things you're going to do down here are going to cost wood and lumber, and you're going to need extra wood to make the lumber. Okay, so that's why I'm mentioning the trees and the wood. You're going to build a second refinery, which is another $15,000. And at that point, you can have one of them constantly creating petroleum and one of them constantly creating gas. You're still going to have shortages, like you won't have enough electricity or batteries or energy. You won't have enough water, but at least they can kind of run on their own at that point. They'll be waiting on things. So you're spending the $200 a minute on both of them while they're just waiting on things to be delivered to them. And that's where you might need a couple more windmills, or usually one water facility is enough if it's next to a pond. Okay, what do I have next? Add more oil pumps as needed. So if you start making a lot more petroleum, you're going to need more crude oil, and crude oil comes from oil pumps. So at this point, you might need 2, 3, or 4 crude pumps. Okay, maybe even 5. Add more industrial workhouses as need. Usually 1 or 2 extra ones are good to have, because now you're starting to have more things for them to do. More oil pumps need to be delivered. The oil, you have more wind turbines, more energy that needs to be delivered, et cetera, et cetera. Now the next big stage is you're going to build a lumber yard, which is $50,000, and then a lumber mill, which is $50,000. Okay. The lumber yard is essentially the same as a woodshed, except it's twice as big. So if you wanted to be frugal at this point, you could just build another woodshed or maybe 2 of those. But at some point in the game, then later, you're going to want to upgrade to a lumber yard. A lumber mill is a special worker who takes 4 woods and he turns it into 1 lumber, and he uses water and energy to do that. So while you're running your lumber mill, your refineries and your lumber mill are going to be competing for the same water and the same electricity. Now, again, where you put your lumber mill is going to be important, the layout, because you want it next to a water pump and a power plant, which are things you're going to build in the future. So this is why you need to plot out your layout ahead of time. And again, I'm not going to tell you how to lay it out. I'm just telling you, you need to plot it out. Okay, look at videos, look at samples, do your research, figure out how you want to do it. Okay, the next thing is you want to build a water pump next to your pond, which is probably going to be the same pond that you're using next to your water facility. So hopefully you can do that. Align it so that it can be used by both the refinery that's coming soon, both the refinery that you have already, and the coming soon power plant. Again, why your layout's important. And you're spending here like $150,000, $200,000, $300,000. So that's why the layout's important, because you can't afford to destroy and redo this 2 or 3 times, even though when you're learning, you probably will. Okay. So your power plant needs to be next to your water pump. And in the video I'm still recording and working on, the screen itself, when you click on power plant, says it needs to be near a water pump. It doesn't need to be near a water pump. It needs to be next to a water pump. Okay. To me, the documentation there or the instructions are slightly misleading. They need to be adjacent to a water pump. Diagonal, I don't even know if that counts. Okay. And then you want your power plant to be next to an existing refinery as well. And I keep saying this is why your layout is important. It's just not easy to do without planning out ahead of time. Then you're going to build a second water pump, another $50,000. And you may need another pond to do this. It's unlikely you can use the same pond for everything, but you can try. You might be able to find a plan that builds things kind of in the right way where one pond might work. I think I did that in some of my earlier games, but I haven't seen anybody else do it that way. And then you build power plant number 2, another $100,000. and it should touch, or one of your refineries should touch 2 power plants, because gasoline needs 6 energies or batteries to produce gasoline. So you want it touching 2 power plants and actually 2 water pumps as well. The water pumps can be diagonal. The power plants, I'm not 100% sure. Then I usually add a second fuel tank, 15,000, near your refineries. Some people would actually do that earlier in this process, and I guess to me it doesn't matter that much. I like to have 2 fuel tanks, the one they originally gave us, and then this second one is, which is closer to the fuel to your refineries. Okay. And then what I call phase 5 is go to bed. So what you might do is watch your town now for maybe 30, 40 minutes to an hour before you go to bed. Try not to touch anything and make sure nothing is out of balance. And if anything's out of balance, you tune your AutoSell script so that it sells something to keep everything in balance. Or you may have to remove a crop or add some trees, take away some trees, whatever you have to do, make sure everything balances. Now you're going to leave the game running, and you have whatever you have during your nighttime, say 6 to 8 hours or more. And like this morning when I came back, I think I have 1.5 million. I did the math and I was expecting 1.92 million. But it seemed like something in the game froze, and I don't know what time of the night it froze. So there's always weird things going to happen like that, right? Again, you must be using the AutoSell script all during the night. And this is another one that, Windows itself is oftentimes programmed to apply Windows updates, usually on I think it's Thursday night, but it could be any night really. So there are ways you can change your computer to not put on the Windows updates. I don't think Unix would automatically do any updates without asking you, but again, you have to check on that. And you need to leave part of the browser showing on the screen. You can't put your computer in sleep or hibernate mode or anything like that. Your computer has to stay running. And at least a corner or part of that yellow background of your page needs to be showing to keep the game running. It may be good to actually hide something on top of it. That might actually, I think, improve what's called your FPS, your frame rate, frames per second or something. I'm going to try to do a video on that in the future. But yeah, if it's not having to redraw things on the screen, then I think your computer overall is going to be a little bit faster. Note, if this does not fit your sleeping schedule, you can proceed with phase 6 as the money from your products come in. Note, you might have to change the AutoSell script parameters and refresh your browser page before going to bed. That's what I meant by tuning, is like when you first start out and you're selling, for example, wheat and sugar, everything's fine. But then later, when you start having gas and crude oil and maybe flour and other things, you got to make sure your script is totally working and tested before you go to bed. Because you have to actually change a few lines of code in that script to tell it what you want to do. It's basically parameters. Not too hard. Now, we're on to day 2, or whatever day it is, based on your sleep schedule. You're going to have this $1 million to $2 million, basically, of fake money. And now you're going to start having fun rebuilding your town or upgrading your town, basically. So here are the things that I would upgrade. Number 1 is consider adding a few more builder houses, because now you're going to start doing a lot more building, right? And when you build a builder house, they do not need to be next to a road. So you can put them in the corner of the board, your playing board, or you can put them like in a way out place that doesn't matter. And you're probably going to destroy them and rebuild them a few times. They're pretty cheap to do, especially when you're making $1 million, right? Okay. I would then typically upgrade some or all of my rancher houses to ATVs, which means all-terrain vehicles. That's a little vehicle they use that makes them faster. And the cost for that is $50,000 each. So for, say $250,000 out of your $1 million, you can upgrade 5 rancher houses. And that's going to take lumber, wood, and energy, okay? So now you might actually need more trees or tree farms than you did the night before. So you might want to upgrade your lumberjacks and or your trees before you do this. Sorry, these numbers aren't lining up. I'll work on that later. Number 3 is selective use of paved roads. So I look at the traffic patterns. I try to see where are all those little workers walking, and wherever you see the most traffic, that's where you probably need to upgrade a paved road. Usually it's next to the storehouse for number one. However many storehouses you have, that's almost always the first. The other one might be the fuel facility or the fuel tank, but you just kind of have to look at your board, how you got it laid out, and you decide that. And then maybe it's just 2 paved roads now, or maybe it's 10, but it's probably not going to be all of them at this point. And that will take wood as well, 3 wood, I think, for each one. Selectively add some more dirt roads. So at this point, I kind of get in my mind's eye where I want my roads to go, and I start like putting a few here and there. Even if they don't connect, I can start to see the pattern of where I want my roads to go. And again, now you have a little more money, so you can consider whether you want to get rid of some of your stumps or your naturally growing trees that you were given at the beginning of the game. It costs 15,000 to remove those, and marshes cost 5,000 to remove. Now, if you remove a marsh, you want to make sure that's not affecting how your crops are getting watered, though. Rocks are very expensive. Most forests have, I think, 3 rocks in them, give or take, and those cost 40,000 to get rid of. So I don't do those yet. I save those for later in the game, unless there's one you really need bad. Okay, it's up to you. And then now you improve your main source of revenue. You add more of whatever it is, or you speed them up. So like lots of times I have the milk barns, and maybe the night before I had four milk barns, and now I maybe upgrade to 6 or 7 or 8 milk barns. Or if you're doing the wool rush, you need more sheep pens. And if you have more sheep pens, you might need some more feed mills and some more wheat. You just kind of have to back up as to what you need to make those things faster. So you want to basically increase your revenue constantly throughout the game. And we'll talk about upgrading your revenue sources. I think that's coming up here in just a minute. If you do a lot of farming, you can upgrade some of your farmer houses to farm tractors, but compare that to an ATV. An ATV for the rancher is only, but compare that to the ATV for the rancher, which is only 50,000. The farm tractor is 175,000. So that's 3 times as much money. And I think in both cases, they seem to about double the speed of that worker. So I don't know why one is basically so cheap and the other one's so expensive. But since there's a discrepancy there, that's why I upgrade my ranchers first. And then it depends what kind of town you're building. If you have a lot of crops, you might need to upgrade a few farmers to tractors as well. You might want to add a second lumber yard at this point, or anywhere in this point, because you're going to be using more wood and more lumber to build these buildings. So that actually should be number 1 or 2 in this section. If your goal is to use the play to earn servers, which means you're just trying to get the daily rewards or just have fun, you're not competing, this is usually more than enough to earn your daily reward in about 15 to 60 minutes each day, depending on the metadata of each week. So for example, in the game I did yesterday, I set up, I think, 6 or 7 milk barns, and that's bringing in, I forget, I think it's bringing in like 60 milk, almost a milk a minute. So I think I get 60 milks or 60 milk runs an hour, which is like 240,000 an hour. And of course, to accomplish your daily goal, currently it looks at the stars, not the dollars. The stars are determined by the metadata file, and I did a special video on that just the other day, so please check that out. Basically, they can change the game, the way the game works. And I'm still not totally sure if that always affects the play to earn servers or not. But if they change the meta file and you built a uniform town, and then all of a sudden they make the meta file go for cakes, then I don't know, you may have to change your town up at that point. But generally you hope that your play to earn servers, you don't have to mess with your town, because you'll have like, I think it's 24 or 27 days before you have to rebuild that town. You should already know how many Town Star coins you earn, depends on your level and the number of NFTs you are playing. So I'm just reminding you of that. That's a whole other discussion, and I've done videos on that before. And now we're into phase 7, whatever day that is, okay? And that is to auto run or keep upgrading. So you can either choose A, let it run on its own and produce a bank of cash. So like for today, I had to work. So between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., my town was running on an old computer here. And by 6 p.m., I had $4.7 million of the in-game money, the fake money, okay? So tonight, if I want to, I can do a lot of upgrading. or I can just play things I've never done before. Like I'm kind of interested in playing with the mining facilities. I'm next to two mountains this time, and I'm just curious, like what is the mining all about? What is making blue steel? I've never done it, so I want to gain experience this week. I'm not playing the competition, so I'm going to use that money to probably build a mine or two. Okay. You can also just keep playing. So it's like today, I said I walked away from my game, and my game made that much money, and I really didn't touch it all day long. However, if you're there in front of your computer and you want to keep improving things, you basically, as your, I call it again, fake money, your play money comes in, you can spend it as you go and just keep improving your city all day long. And if you're competing, that's probably the smarter way to do it. And then phase 8, now we're getting to where it's more flexible and it totally depends on you. Okay. At this point, you have a sustaining town. It's making the in-game money. You have to decide to do more of the same or to scale up to the next level. And what that means is you switch to like bakeries, candy shops, uniforms. For instance, you might be making sugar to get you started, or wool. Let's say you did wool. Say up to this point you're just selling wool and you have, who knows, 10, 15 sheep pens. Well, now you want to start making wool yarn, which sells for more. And then you want to add some cotton and you want to make uniforms, okay? And to make uniforms, you're going to need more power plants, okay? And it just kind of gets a little more complicated from there. If you're building bakeries, then you have to balance like your wheat and like you have to have, what is it, eggs and milk to make the butter, and then to make the batter, it takes certain things, and then you combine the batter and the butter and all this stuff. And it depends how many bakeries you set up and all that kind of stuff. The candy shop is fairly simple. You just need sugar and peppermint. Okay, that's a pretty easy one. You keep verifying all the time that your AutoSell script is selling whatever it is you're doing. So if you're doing bakeries, your AutoSell script is going to deal with that. If you're selling uniforms, your AutoSell script will deal with that kind of stuff. So this is the you decide what you're going to do phase. And now you're to you should probably say end of day 2 or maybe day 3 and beyond. Constant expanding and tweaking and tuning. I didn't know this video was going to be so long. It's already 39 minutes. So I thought this was going to be like a 15-minute video. But anyway, just sharing my experience. Now there's another script called the production rate monitor script. And that will tell you, for example, how many milk you're making per hour, how many wool yarn you're making per hour, that kind of stuff. And what you can do is you can write down those numbers and then refresh your screen. Actually, make a tweak. So a tweak would mean like, if I add 2 more sheep pens, is that going to increase my number of uniforms per hour? Or is it going to increase my wool yarn per hour? Or is it, or am I already what they call redlining, meaning I'm producing as much wool yarn as I can. I don't have enough room to add any more farmers, so maybe adding another sheep pen doesn't make any difference. Or maybe you need to add 2 more farmers. You have to decide, like, what do you need to add? Maybe you need another feed mill. You have to balance things, and you just have to learn how the balancing works. And that's part of your, what I call learning here. And you tweak, you see if it's better, you see if it gets worse, you tweak it back, you tune it, that kind of thing. So you have this ongoing tweaking, tuning, learning phase for however many days or whatever you want. Now, phase 8 above, or 9, this one, may include the following. You're going to keep removing probably all your tree stumps at this point and all the rocks. You're going to pave, I would say, at least 50% or more of your roads. You will keep rearranging things in your roads to make them more efficient. Like maybe your roads aren't straight. You want to straighten them out. You have to maybe move some buildings around. Or you're setting up a better model so that next time you play, you know where you're going to put things. At this point, you're probably using almost every square on the board, or at least 95% of them. No dead or unused spaces. You might include additional lumber mills or power plants at this point as needed. And at this point, you probably, at least by the 3rd or 4th day, you've probably upgraded all your worker houses to their top level. So almost every worker house can be upgraded. Like again, the rancher goes to the ATM, the farmer goes to the tractor, Your construction workers have, I forget what it's called. Looks more like a crane. It's not a crane, but it's called something else. So they all have faster versions of them. Now, if you're doing the competition, you can monitor your placement. There's that little button in the upper right corner or that little circle. You click it and it says, okay, you're number 532. Okay, and you're thinking, wow, I'm getting close to 400. So maybe I need to work a little harder, right? And so you need to determine also if you're going up or down. So maybe at certain times of the day, you get a piece of paper out and you say, okay, like at 8 a.m. this morning, I was number 800. And then at noon, did you go up to number 790 or did you drop down to 810? And usually you'll probably keep going in the same direction unless you tweak something and make it much better. Okay. And at some point, you'll probably know whether you're going to be in the top 400 or not, usually, especially by the end of the week. So like if you're number 800, you're probably not going to move up to 400. That's like too far to move. So maybe you can advance 10 or 20 places a day, maybe even 40 places a day, but you probably can't move up 50 places a day. Okay. So you have to be realistic if you're competing, whether you can win or not. Or maybe you have a lot of NFTs. Like sometimes I think the winners just have tons of NFTs that they've invested in. So I'm kind of personally not big in the competitions unless I spend another $5,000 or $10,000 on NFTs. And that's what I'm saying. The final push. So, like for example, if it's you have 24 hours or 36 hours left in the game and you're competing, you might have to do a final push. You need to I spelled that wrong, know when the competition ends and decide if you need to work more hours or give up. So that's why I was saying if you're number 800 or 900 and it's the last day of the competition, you might as well give up. If you're number 420, then you need to get to work and do whatever you can to try to win. But you got to remember that the prize for position like 350 to 400 is usually not that much anyway. So is it worth you $25 to like sit at your computer all day and frustrate yourself, right? Okay. That is the end of my document. So let us recap. This could be, the phases are the most important part. The days are adjustable depending on your schedule. But again, where I live, it depends again if I'm working or not that day. But if on Tuesdays I have time, I could try to do all this amount of work so that I can go to bed and come back in the morning and have my $1 million or $2 million. That may not be possible on day one. That might happen for you on day two, or you're playing on the play to earn servers and you don't care what day it is, it doesn't matter. This is generally, I think, how the game will work for almost anybody. And if other people have other ideas, I'd like to know. I can always change this document. And like I said, maybe in about a week, I can turn this into a PDF file and have it available as a downloadable link under my video. And again, I appreciate you guys watching my channel. And again, every day I try to give little facts or stories about me. I always enjoyed games as a kid, but to be honest, as an adult, I kind of stayed away from games because I think I would be addicted to them. And I think I'm becoming addicted to Townstar. If you spend too much time gaming, that can affect other areas of your life. And so I think a lot of time, other than get-togethers with friends or something, I never played a lot of computer games. And now that I'm an old guy and, maybe I'm enjoying it again. Maybe that'd be a good retirement. Who knows? But, if you read a book or something, or you study to improve yourself, or to get another degree, or to get another license, or to learn how to make money, that's always been my primary interest, But that's the nice thing about Townstar. You can make money with it as well. So that's what's kind of cool about the whole concept of the cryptos and play to earn. And again, I hope you've enjoyed it. Likes and subscribes are always much appreciated. And this is Neil, and I will see you on the next video.